Hey, we are back. Joined by Danny and Clint and John's chair. He went up to get a drink a couple minutes ago, and he hasn't come back, so he'll be here shortly. But how you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Yeah, doing rather well. It's really hot though. Weather be damned.
It is that. I'm down in North Carolina. It's like mid to high 90s all week. That kind of sucks. But I've had reason to stay in because there's all sorts of stuff to pay attention to. Obviously, the World Cup still all about that. France won today. I'm good. Sorry if you're an England fan, anyone. Yeah. But yeah, so it's been really cool to stay in. I've been reading a lot of stuff actually. I did like a massive catch up of the few things that I'd kind of fallen behind on. Um, but I want to start with you guys. Clint, it's been a while, especially. So like, what have you guys been reading?
I've been reading more of the same. I'm kind of I'm getting into certain series a lot. I see myself really enjoying like Soma right now and Nanatsu no Taizai. I pretty much like await each chapter like with bated breath, so to speak.
Yeah, it's really good. Hey, John, you're muted.
There we go.
There you are.
Yes, I'm
Welcome.
here.
Welcome. We are on, by the way.
Yay.
Yeah. Anyway, just once again, Danny and John, what are you guys reading?
Um, we touched on this briefly when we talked on Wednesday, but weeks without One Piece, I sort of end up like not reading a lot because it doesn't feel like a week. But I did, however, at some point, I think it was at the beginning of the week. It was either Monday or Sunday. I got on Toto and started like adding some things that I wanted to catch up on, things that seemed interesting. So I've got a nice little list ahead of me. I know some folks were speaking well about Fuka,
Yep.
and gosh, I added. There was what else did I put on my list? I don't even remember now. Oh, I want to go back and read Cross Game. Folks have been talking good about that, and I kind of felt the desire to read a sports manga. So that's not new, but
No. I think actually you in particular would like that. I mean, aside from it just being sheer brilliance, I know that you're a fan of baseball, in
mhm.
particular Japanese baseball, so that lends a little bit more. And yeah, I could really just see you liking the whole aesthetic of Cross Game. There's a real distinct feeling to it that I think you might like.
Well, I'm looking forward to it.
Sweet. Danny?
And I have been playing catch up this since last week. I'm catching up on Symphony. And the more I read it, the more it honestly feels like it is trying to, you know, do something different. But it's not really clicking with me. I mean, from the get-go, it kind of already was written in a very different way. I guess one like example of this would be, in particular, it's like its take on morality. It seems to actually try to tackle, something of a gray scale, which a lot of shonen series, or at least particularly any series in Shonen Jump, don't do very often. But at the same time, it's like it's trying to do a lot for me, and I guess it's in doing so it kind of loses its own, you know, like what makes it good, which I mean the first chapter is rather indicative of this, that it essentially is one big exposition dump for a majority of the chapter, and this kind of continues on in the later chapters as well, until it just becomes a battle series in the context of like these odd morality issues that happen every once in a while. So can't say I'm too excited. Going into finally being able to catch up on this, and then now reading it week to week, especially lately, since it seems to have tried like taken an even darker turn. So it's a very weird series series, and it's just strange. As I can't really put a finger on what it's trying to do here.
Yeah, I mean, on that note, Michael did a review that went up today, kind of touching on the same points, and we've all kind of talked about it, so maybe that's a good first topic. I mean, we can branch out. That guy actually tweeted us before the show asking about dark tones and how they should be handled within a series overall, like as a general topic, which I want to get to that, but let's start with Stealth Symphony since we're already on that topic. Because it did start off, what everyone was saying back when we had kind of our roundtable discussion about it launching at the same time as Illegal Rare. I mean, there were two others alongside it, but those two were really similar in terms of the kind of concepts and plot. But Illegal Rare was all vampire, dark, seedy underworld, that kind of stuff. And Stealth Symphony, at least at the beginning, presented itself as, well, that we still have similar concepts. I mean, it's technically like a protection organization, so to speak. So, the similar kind of concepts of assassination and whatnot, but presented in a more lighthearted tone that it is now just totally thrown away. I mean, you had a couple different characters introduced to influence that. I actually like one of them. I think Slice is a good addition to the cast because he finally gives the series direction. I didn't think that there was much of it before then. But I mean, what do you guys think about overall just maybe not an individual character if it's not relevant, but just the entire idea of turning a series dark, or turning Stealth Symphony dark, particularly?
First of all, like Slice, I agree with you that he was pretty good in the series, but I also have to note the fact that he's like the exact same character as the very tall scythe wielding guy from Kenichi. They're like the same guy. Have you ever seen them in the same place at once? I don't think so.
That's a good point.
But what the point that was raised earlier about like the series not really knowing what it's trying to do, I don't think I don't think it does know what it's trying to do, because what it's trying to do is stay out of the bottom of the table. So it just keeps jumping from place to place. Like one moment it's like lighthearted and it's like discovering all these new powers and like exploring the world. And the next minute it's like really dark backstory and like tormented characters and like it's just trying to find something that clicks with fans to like get off the bottom of the table. And I think it's kind of like the desperation to do so kind of comes through.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also what's kind of frustrating is that you rarely see this work. I mean, I don't have an example offhand, and so I very well accept I could be wrong here, but I can't think of a time where a series was introduced with one particular kind of feeling and concept and tone, and like Stealth Symphony was, this is what we're doing, this is the plot, and it's going to be lighthearted, it's going to be a lighter take on these kind of more serious topics, and that's what we're doing. I've never seen a series introduced with all of that. It clearly knows what it wants to do, and then it starts to fail, that the fans are not buying in, so it radically changes everything it's that defines it, basically. It radically changes everything about tone and or plot and or setting, whatever the case may be. And then the fans love it. Have you guys ever heard of a series that did that?
I think that's something that happens in a lot of fiction in general, but I can't think of one that's done it quite so quickly. I mean, I can think of a lot of non-manga related stories that do that, but I think it's sort of a trap that authors can kind of fall into, where they feel like they need to stir something up, and so they take it to a dark place when it doesn't really fit in with the rest of the theme of the series. You can do that kind of stuff without like not you can do that and still be fun, and I think it's some authors forget that that's possible.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't really feel successful to me. It doesn't really feel like a good course of action. Honestly, when you look at the track record of series that do this, because this isn't the first, series that try to capture an audience just frantically before they're inevitably canceled. The list goes on and on. And just look at any series that didn't make it to 30 chapters, and the case is probably going to be that they did that. They tried to find some audience, but there were a few that didn't. There were a few that just decided, well, you know what? If I'm going to be canceled anyway, why bother changing my original idea? I'll at least just see it out for the few people that liked it the way it was. I'll just see the story out. And I would prefer that, frankly. I mean, if Stealth Symphony's not gonna live, and it, from all indication, the next round of cancellations, it's almost certainly gone. Why not just keep the story the way it is and just wrap it up as a tiny little, all right, it's too bad this didn't continue, but this was just a little brief picture, a little window of a world, and maybe we'll come back to it another day. I don't know. That's just me. It's frustrating though. Danny, do you read Stealth Symphony?
Yes, I'm catching up on it. And so one thing that we're talking about how this kind of genre change influences a series as it's trying to go along, and the fact that it seems almost reactionary to its own position weekly. I mean, we can't really know that for sure, but I mean, I always felt that from the beginning, it always had this underlying darkness or a subtle darkness, as opposed to illegal rare, which was kind of more up in front about it, and also a lot more black and white about it. And Stealth Symphony kind of toyed around with that for a bit, as I mentioned before, it was a little more gray. But then, the series kind of, I felt where it started losing all of that is when it started to, add character after character of all these different organizations all working at the same time. And, I think we're, only, less than 20 chapters in, and we already have, a mass amount of characters already in this series. And it's not only is it too bothersome to keep track of all of them, but it also kind of muddles the direction of the series. I mean, for a long time now, you kind of didn't know where the series is going to go. It's just Sieg trying to find a job, and then stuff happens as a result of it. And so you have these other characters that keep getting introduced with each organization. I think there are 4 different factions, 4 or 5. I'm gonna have to check on that, of different organizations or people right now, and it's it's a little bit too much to focus on in terms of not only characters themselves, because then a lot of them just become background characters, who are we supposed to pay attention to and whatnot, and it also just then I lose the interest here. Then you kind of just forget about everybody and just focus on the main characters, and that becomes kind of boring.
Yeah. I want to interject something totally unrelated. I notice we're having a bit of connection issues. I don't think there's much we can do about it. I know I'm having a bit of storming going on outside. I assume it's just that. So if we drop entirely or if we have some kind of communication issues, I apologize, but that's what's going on. Hopefully it'll get sorted out soon. And I did forget to say at the top of the show, please do get in touch with us. Already a few of you are tweeting in to us. At Shonen Beam on Twitter is the best way to get in touch with us. But yeah, I mean, continuing on with the Stealth Symphony, with the Stealth Symphony topic, it's way too much. Michael's review that he put up today really just hammered home. I mean, everything in the review was valid and interesting, but the thing that struck me the most, it was titled Stealth Symphony 16. We're 16 chapters in, not even 20. And your point, Danny, about there being all these different factions. I could name maybe 4 characters in Stealth Symphony. There's Jig or Sieg, however you want to pronounce it, and Trauma and Slice, who I remember because he's interesting and adds something to the story and gives it direction. And I think there's someone called Alice, who I frankly only remember because her name's Alice and that's kind of overused. Am I supposed to remember the ninja star person and the person with there's someone with an animal or something, and there's a sword? There's way too much. There's the little V&V head guy, the little guy. I don't no idea what his name is. It's just way, way, way too much information. And it's one of those cases where it's pretty easy It's obviously not easy to make a series. That's a stupid claim I would never make. But it's easy to have an idea of what works, even if that's not exactly like I'm not saying follow a formula, but I mean if you look at Dragon Ball, if you look at One Piece, Naruto when it was still good, like all these different series that really catch on huge, look at the first chapter, look at the first volume. They don't bombard you with things. Just get a general sense for what they do. Oh, okay, this is a really simple, easy conflict to begin, and there's one or two characters who matter at the beginning, and then over time more will be added.
It would have
Here, I can't follow it. What's up?
it would have been as though like in the very first arc of One Piece they had introduced like every supernova and their crew.
Yeah, it's absolute overkill. I legitimately just can't follow what's happening, and I'm not dumb. I mean, maybe if I had loved the original concept of Stealth Symphony, I would be a little bit more invested and take more time to really study the characters and whatnot. But that's a lot to ask of a new reader. You want to wow the reader, not require them to study the series.
And I guess that's the rather unfortunate thing in this case because the way I see it, at least for me, I'm perfectly fine with the things that they're introducing. The only problem is that it's all been introduced so fast. What's happened in 16 chapters should have, been, doled out over a longer period of time. The fact that it's gotten to this point in only 16 chapters is, it really hurts it. It reeks of, I guess, desperation in the sense that they're trying to they're trying to introduce the world to you as quickly as possible, so then you know what the whole deal is, so then it doesn't get canceled. Which is, the unfortunate problem with the way that the Weekly Shonen Jump series are all ranked and assessed. I guess. I mean, we don't know perfectly how it's done, but I guess we have a general idea of how it gets ranked. And if chapters are living week to week, then that only creates this idea that you need to get what your series is about out there, or else the people are going to lose interest. But then that creates this problem of authors pacing things too quickly, and as a result, just inundating people with information and characters, and there's no room to breathe, and like that's a big problem, and this is what we're seeing here, and it's not, it's just you can see it for yourself. It's not, the series isn't ranking very well, and it also from a series point of view, it's suffering quite a bit.
For
So
me, it falls flat. Go ahead, Clint.
so like hypothetically, say we're talking about the largest manga magazine, the largest manga company in Japan. And they have an enormous team of editors, people who have worked there for years. They're widely known to just be the best producer of manga in the Japanese world. Um, and they have this very stringent selection process where people get rejected time after time after time trying to submit a manga and become a famous mangaka and make it in the world of manga. And it's very tough to get a shot and to get in, and you have to have the perfect idea and execution, and your art has to be on point. Maybe, given all those things, you should be guaranteed a run of longer than 8 chapters before you begin being ranked.
I mean, that's possible, or perhaps like put it on the other end. Like even if you're being ranked, you have a like minimum publishing run of 30 chapters or something like that. But either way, like whatever end of the scale you put it on, I could see that working. Um, yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess the way that I always reasoned it out was that after eight or so chapters, you have enough chapters for a tankobon, collected chapters volume, and if they need to put in the resources and money to, having to publish these books out for a series that isn't doing very well, then it kind of feels like a waste. So like I'd imagine it has more to do with them having to actually sell this, and if it isn't selling very well, then what's the point of keeping a series running and having copies of these books out there that aren't selling at all? So I mean, I would imagine something like that has to do with how they decide whether or not to keep it for 30 or so chapters. But I mean, also, I guess there's the thing where there are a lot of people, giving in their ideas for new manga. So I guess one other way to look at it is that they're throwing a bunch of things at the wall and seeing what sticks. And I guess more often, and then I guess at some point you're eventually going to get something that's good, that also, works very well with the fans and whatnot, that, clicks, I guess. It's just that the way that this particular series, went about it, it kind of just took the wrong path, I suppose.
I mean, the point that Clint makes kind of precludes the idea of why is the biggest manga company in the world throwing darts at a wall? That doesn't make any sense to me. You have the luxury and you have the liberty to do absolutely anything you want because you have the One Pieces and the Narutos of the world that are carrying your magazine to unquestioned success. You are number one. You are dominant right now. You can afford to let things grow because what do you think is more likely? Endlessly throwing darts at a wall and one of them will stick, or letting those darts that you throw at the wall live for just a little bit longer, letting these new series just foster a little bit more interest on their own. This is completely open to opinion, but I personally would think that there's greater chance of a series finding an audience if the author is not feeling panicked and rushed to get. I mean, it's very simple supply and demand. If you force story element, just every single detail, like Stealth Symphony has done here, here's the world, and here are these characters, and here's this organization, and here's a conflict in the future, and look at this director, and they might actually be evil, pay attention, but we're actually going to show it right now. It's all supply. You just don't care anymore. You need to leave me wanting something for the future. That's why I think that first big arc, the first arc is always so defining for a series. For the first arc, the actual proper arc of Stealth Symphony, to be this big, like, friend on friend, every single character jumble mess, the whole escort mission thing, terrible choice. And the chapters weren't even bad. I thought that they were fine. But the point is, even if the chapters individually weren't bad, what they did for the series overall was catastrophic. You made it so I couldn't possibly care about these things because you've left nothing to the imagination. There's nothing in the future to come my way. Also, Jeff is here. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, and I definitely agree with all that.
Okay, good. Moving on. No, we were basically just talking about Stealth Symphony getting darker, and then general topic. Once again, is Jump a little too cruel and too rushed in ending series? But to kind of move it, there's a couple different ways that we could branch this topic, and hopefully we can also involve John on this because I know you don't read SS, so it's a little tough. But two different things here, and let's start with what that guy suggested because I want to get to tweets. What do you think about dark tones within any given series? Not just Stealth Symphony and not just the way that Stealth Symphony has kind of betrayed its original concept and gone in a different direction, but how do you think dark tones should be handled in general as a topic in any given series in Shonen?
I think the obvious answer is that everything has to exactly copy Shingeki no Kyojin. No substitutes for that. You just have to do exactly what it does.
Yeah, clearly. It works, right? Except for Iron Knight.
Anyway. I think the trickiest thing is that if you're not careful, like really dark tones can sort of become parodying really quickly. And this is sort of the way, that's like immediately how Illegal Rare felt, like right off the bat, But then I think about, gosh, I don't know what I'm trying to say here. I mean, obviously you have to be true. If you want to make a dark series, I mean, you got to be, true to whatever your vision is. You got to, make it dark, but I don't know. Like one of the best dark series I can think of is Death Note, and I mean it was really dark, but it didn't. I'm trying to think of what elements Death Note had as a dark series that made it succeed. No vampires, first of all.
Selling shirts at Hot Topic.
Being incredibly easy to cosplay.
That's true.
But
does that, even though I'm not articulating it very well, does that make sense? Like, there's something about it that you have to treat it almost more carefully than other genres, just before you're making fun of yourself before you get started.
For me personally, what I liked more about Death Note is that it actually felt somewhat intelligent. Like it was going in the dark route, but it knew what it was doing, and you could sort of tell that right from the start. I know it's not exactly the most planned out series that there is, but just by reading it, you get the impression that it was a lot more planned out than it really was, and I think that's what's really important in that case. For me, it was something like Stealth Symphony. What I don't like about this is that I think we've almost reached the point where like going in a dark route like this has almost become like token, or it's just something that's to be expected. I mentioned on Twitter that I recently finished Read or Die, and it did almost the exact same thing as Stealth Symphony. Like I was surprised. It's not as complicated and hard to figure out, but it felt the same in terms of overall tone, I thought. And when you can compare two series like that shouldn't have comparisons that strong, it's pretty telling of just how unoriginal this kind of thing is.
Well, so I guess going off of Death Note and what about its dark elements really made it appealing. I think one thing that's important also to note is that I recall there was an interview with Oba in regards to like I believe the question was something along the lines of like what was your stance on justice, because L was a very idealistic person, and you'd imagine that they were trying to say something by making Death Note, but his response was only that he didn't put too much thought on the whole idea, like the ideas behind what was actually going on, and it was just a story that was written for entertainment. So I mean that is probably the most important thing here, because it is a very entertaining series in lieu of the actual things that actually happened in it, in regards to all the deaths and the things that actually made it dark. Like the whole crux of it was this cat and mouse game between L and Light, and I guess it's that kind of X factor that's missing in like Illegal Rare or Stealth Symphony. They're just not very interesting.
It, sometimes I think now that I'm thinking about it, what you can't do is try to be really dark and like irreverent at the same time, and that kind of seems to be the line that Stealth Symphony sort of towed, just based on what you're talking about. Like,
Yeah.
those two things, I mean, they're not diametrically opposed, but you need to be quite the storyteller to be able to pull that off, and that lends itself, that when that happens, it's usually not something that's targeted at kids. So
That's it. That's the big thing right there. And before the opportunity for this passes up, Samu does tweet to say, I think what John is saying is that it has to be authentic. It has to have a purpose, not not just there to spice it up. I think authentic is pretty much like the crux of what you were kind of getting at, if I'm not mistaken.
That says it better than than I did.
The entire thing for me is either the core idea, the original concept, is good or it isn't. I mean, at the end of the day, it's that simple. And frankly, we've been talking for a couple months now about, when Illegal Rare and Stealth Symphony were both introduced into the magazine, and which one do we prefer? How do we like the dark storytelling of Illegal Rare versus the initially lighthearted storytelling of Stealth Symphony? That's all relevant, that's all interesting, and fair enough to us for talking about it, I guess. But it kind of misses the point in a particular way, which is both of those series were in effect the same thing. I know I brought that up at the time, and I think we had a conversation about that. They're effectively the same concept. So already you're kind of failing in that regard. You're not going to stand out too much on your own, because aside from the tone, the concepts are basically the same. And they're basically the same as one of the main concepts of Hunter x Hunter, which was just coming back. And you're never going to win fans away from Hunter x Hunter if you're trying to go for the people that like that kind of, seedy underworld and goings-on and having to really, the issue of morality and the questioning of who's right and who's wrong and what defines right and wrong and all that. Hunter x Hunter already has that audience sewn up. If it's actually coming back, tough luck. You're out of luck there. That's not going to happen. But to do it in shonen, to do these dark tone topics in shonen, everything that you were getting at, John, about Death Note. You have to pick an idea that's not just good enough on its own. That's number one with the bullet, obviously. You have to pick a concept that works and is very interesting. But after that, you have to pick the right demographic. If that idea is brilliant, but that idea is what we're talking about here with Stealth Symphony and its assassination and this protection agency and all these kinds of things, you can't do that in shonen without, as you said, John, being a hell of a writer. And I'm not trying to take away and say that Narita Ryogo is a bad writer. Obviously, he's well accredited at this point with Bakano and Durarara behind him. But you're making life difficult. If nothing else, you're making life extremely difficult for yourself. That's a seinen topic, because then you can actually go into what the people that like those kinds of topics really want to see, which is content we can't put in shonen. That's my phone. Sorry about that. It's another one of those Florida Spanish-speaking spammers. Enough. I mean, is that another issue too? Is it just a case of mismatched demographics? Is it something like the core topics at the heart of Stealth Symphony and to a similar extent Illegal Rare? Can it not really be done completely properly in shonen?
I will say that writer coming off of Bakano and Durarara has been writing very differently than what he should for a shonen. I think it's probably the same sort of issue that Nishio Isin ran into when he started publishing Medaka Box. He just wasn't used to the demographic that he was writing for now.
I actually wanted to get onto this topic. I felt this is a perfect bridging point to talk about Medaka Box, and Danny and I are going to fight, I think. Is it an issue, like what you bring up, is it an issue of these light novel authors just not being well suited? Not in every case, obviously, because Index and Railgun, perfectly acceptable manga. It's actually quite a good manga, each one of those. I prefer Railgun slightly. Both are very good. So certainly not to say they suddenly lose their writing talent when they switch formats. But in certain cases, and I think these are two prime examples, Ryogo with Stealth Symphony and Nishio Isin with Medaka Box, personally, and I would imagine there's going to be disagreement here, personally I felt that Medaka Box was, for the most part, a train wreck. It did certain things very well, but in other parts it completely missed the point of what it was doing. And, to go back to what John was saying, it self-parodied deliberately, but then missed the point that its self-parody was actually negatively influencing itself, because it was saying, it was basically pointing out the tropes and cliches and whatnot of shonen at every single turn. And anyone who's read Medaka Box, or I assume watched it, I haven't seen the anime, but I assume it's the same, it was making fun of all of the cliches of the overpowered main character and the convoluted plots and the simplistic conflicts and all that kind of stuff, which is all well and good until you realize, yeah, you may be making fun of them, but you're doing them. So you're not really above it, are you? So do you guys think it's an issue of these authors not being, in all cases, well adapted to the format?
Well, so the way I see it, in the case of Medaka Box, I'm not entirely sure about Stealth Symphony since I haven't read his previous works, but I kind of watched Durarara the anime, and it seems to fit this kind of same style, which I'm going to be talking about, which is they seem to be writing for their own audience, people who read their light novels, as opposed to conforming to this a lot more shonen jumpish style, which, as you can see, causes a disparity, because it in the case of Medaka Box, it kind of, it's not like as deep as his or much of an introspective as Bakemonogatari, like the Monogatari series, or any of his other works, but it still kind of walks that line. It's almost like a lighter, a more distilled version of it, which I guess is kind of the problem, because you're not really satisfying either camps by doing that, because you're kind of alienating the people who read Shonen Jump, and you're also alienating the fans of Nishio Isin, because they're not getting exactly what they want from it, and as a result you kind of get this very odd beast, which I'm assuming is also happening here with not Illegal Rare, Stealth Symphony, because again, it's not really like, it can't really be that dark, but it's still trying to be like very, intricate, and have an ensemble cast and whatever. But at the same time, it's kind of losing its, the grip on its storytelling, and that's supposed to be, the pillar of this all, but it's just not working for it. So I actually question whether it is smart to even just have light novel authors try this out. I mean, it seems to not create or rather, from the two examples that we have, this fusion of, a shonen manga and, a light novel author doesn't seem to create a good enough, commentary. Because I mean, I guess in a perfect world, it would be a light novel on, as a manga, which again doesn't really make much sense either, because a novel is a novel and a manga is a manga. They have their own strengths and their own weaknesses, but combining the two doesn't seem to create a favorable result, in the long run. So I actually question why they even bother doing this kind of thing anymore.
Well, probably it's about money. I mean, let's be brutally honest here. It's, hey, there's a famous person who wouldn't mind awfully doing a manga. This will help both of us out. It'll raise his profile. It'll sell some volumes. So, I mean, and frankly, it works. I mean, here we are talking about it, raising awareness about it further. So clearly, in terms of publicity, it is successful. Any press is good press. But in terms of producing a quality work, yeah, I still think there are questions. And that guy, I think, sums it up. A tweet in from that guy 3331. I feel that they somewhat underestimate what it really takes to write a shonen series, and I think that's pretty accurate. It's simple, but it's kind of spot on. We talked about this, I think, last time, where the concept of shonen and even the word shonen in some circles is kind of used pejoratively. It's kind of an insult. Oh, I like this series. What is that? Oh, it's this new shonen series. Oh, it's shonen. As though it's like that's just the bare bones. It's the base, and anything else like seinen or josei or any other kind of series is like, oh, you're in the beginner stuff, but eventually you'll move on to the actual content. It's not like that whatsoever, because the themes may be simpler, or the themes may be targeted at a younger audience. Fair enough, I understand that fully, but that's not to say it's easy to do. If it was easy to do to write a shonen series, we'd have a lot more brilliant shonen series, and there are a lot, but there are not that many.
It's kind of a misnomer that something simpler is inherently easier to do, when in most cases that's actually the opposite. I mean, you kind of have to be more precise, if you try to start pleasing everyone all the time with it, which kind of leads into some other stuff that we were talking about, then you end up making no one happy.
Well, I mean, you can ask any chef. The hardest dish to make is the simplest, most classic one, because everyone has their own version of how that is correct, and you can't get it right. Everyone likes their mom's cooking the best. It's that sort of situation. Like, you can't win, so it's tough to do well. And I think that's what's going on with shonen. Like, you've had so many series like One Piece and Dragon Ball that just knock it out of the park, but you still have to use the formula to a degree. Like, you can't completely eschew all of the tropes that come along with a shonen. So you're stuck trying to do this same sort of idea, but well, in a way that'll capture people's imagination, and it's difficult.
Oh, definitely. I think that, I mean, the idea, John, it's a brilliant point, that saying something is simple does not at all mean that it's easy to do, and it's very much the opposite. That goes back to what we've talked about repeatedly, which is, take those comparisons. The point I keep making about look to the best, look to the classics, the point I made earlier about Stealth Symphony could have taken a look at One Piece and seen, or Dragon Ball, or any other series like this, and seen, it doesn't overload a ton of characters right away, a ton of scenarios, nothing to the same extent as the escort mission did in Stealth Symphony. There's nothing like that whatsoever. It's more about what a series doesn't do than what it actually does. I mean, of course, ultimately it's still doing, it's still executing, it's still knowing its limits, but that's just it. It's knowing where to stop. It's pacing itself. It's having confidence too, and this goes back to Clint's entire concept of maybe you give it a little bit more buffer time before ranking it, or my counter or amendment to that, which is give it a minimum length of publishing time or something. These authors, even, I mean, Naruto Ryogo, I'm not at all going to sit here and say he's not confident. That would be silly. He must be very confident. He's a successful author. But with so many other cases of these newcomers, this is my first ever series. I'm getting my big break in Shueisha, big break in Shonen Jump, the lock-ons of the world. This is the first thing I've ever written, and you throw them out there to the wolves. These unconfident authors are going to just grasp at straws and try to find anything at all that works. So it's understandable that it doesn't work, but that's what they're doing, is they're overloading because they don't have the wisdom, or sometimes just the innate talent, in the case of a series like One Piece, where it's the first major series by an author, of just knowing, no, more is not better. I'm just going to stick to this concept, and the rest will come later. And I mean, it sounds like I could just say, and it's that easy. Just put a character here, a villain there, and give them a nice little battleground to fight on, and that's that. But it's not easy whatsoever. So again, that guy, spot on. It's not at all to be underestimated, I feel.
Hard to do more with less.
Yep, absolutely. I want to catch up on a few of the tweets that we missed here. Some of them are specific to the topic. Quite a while ago, that guy also chimed in to say, I'm not surprised at this turn, and that's to do with Stealth Symphony turning dark, due to who the author is. But on that note, it makes me wonder why he decided to write a Jump manga. Again, same thing. It does make you kind of question it. Samu is here, as I mentioned. Can't think of any Shonen Jump's manga that changes over and over until something sticks. World Trigger is an example where it took a while, chapter 14 exactly, to stick, but it never really changed its idea. That's an entirely different topic, and that can happen all the time. If you have like a mutation or an evolution or more development planned later on that doesn't exactly fit the tone of the early part of the series, that's fine. I'm talking about when it's desperation. I'm sure you knew that, but desperation shows. But in the case of like Reborn is a good example. Before it turned into the Reborn we know and loathe now, Reborn was initially kind of weekly, episodic fun gag, lighthearted comedy. Oh, haha, he's dying will mode, and he's going to do this thing. He's asking out this girl and whatnot. All right. But you could always kind of tell this is probably eventually going to become an action series. And sure enough, it did.
I think Negi was the ultimate example of that.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I think I talked over you.
Oh, I think Negima's the ultimate example of exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's perfectly viable, and actually in some cases great, to kind of pace yourself at the beginning but have a big lofty plan later on. And I would agree with you too, that World Trigger is the same way. Kind of Haikyuu in the same way. I mean, it didn't change, but it took a while for it to stick, at least for me. Also saying, Samu, this is, I think Stealth Symphony was set up for the long term, introducing a vast cast. Sadly, it never worked early on, and it's much too fast. It's too much too fast now. Excuse me, I misread that. Yeah, I think we've kind of touched on the general point in response to that, but I would have to agree. And the final one that I overlooked here to finally catch up is that guy saying, I agree with John, one of the things I love about FMA was that the author felt like she had a point to it all. Yeah, and that's another point, in addition to knowing how to hold back a little bit, is to also make everything mean something. And FMA certainly did that very well. So before we move on to any other topics that we could cover, is there anything else that anyone wants to say about Stealth Symphony, dark tones, light novel authors coming to shonen manga, anything on that topic?
One thing I was going to mention that I thought of while you were talking about the questions, you might have brought this up specifically, but it occurs to me that maybe Stealth Symphony, it's not simply that it was written by a guy who's familiar with light novels. I think it said it was like literally written as though it were a light novel, and that's why there were so many characters early on, because with a light novel you usually have the whole novel coming out at once, and you have the payoff, like in that first volume you have the payoff for that many characters. And I think it just never occurred to the creator to change anything like that. It's sort of similar to the problems I have with a lot of the Shaft series, which are written in the same way as a light novel and can often suffer a lot for that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a whole other topic altogether. Light novels, the way they're written. I mean, I'm not too much of an expert on the subject, but I'm aware of a couple of their faults. Though in that regard, we did mention FMA before, and the way that I saw FMA was FMA kind of seemed like a novel, but more along the lines of, it was all already written out, and we're just watching it play out for the most part, as opposed to Stealth Symphony, which feels like it is going week to week in terms of like how it's being written, which like I said, it lacks a cohesion in those regards.
Yeah. I mean, you don't strictly have to plan out your entire story. I think actually you would lose a little bit of the spice in your manga if you stayed absolutely rigidly to the original concept. You do need to kind of take you need to learn from what you have done. You need to learn from what's working, not just from a series that you've previously completed and from your past experience, but also your current experience. You need to adapt on the fly, and in some cases that's responding to fan reactions. Not to say you should change it. I love Sasuke, write nothing but Sasuke. But at the same time, if you find that certain scenarios just click better and the fans are also telling you that, you need to open your eyes to that. So, what's interesting, to go back to what Jeff had said, we were talking previously during the light novel origin, like the author adaptation problem and whatnot. I forget which one of you, I apologize, but one of you made mention of how it's kind of difficult because it feels, I think it was Clint actually, it feels like they're writing for their fans, and it just doesn't quite work. And Danny made the point, I remember this, that it's kind of the best of no worlds because the fans aren't going to be satisfied because you're having to adapt your style, but at the same time, the in this case Shonen Jump or whatever, the manga magazine, those fans aren't going to be happy because it's a totally different style to what they're used to. The interesting exception, and I mentioned Index and Railgun, that works, and I think the reason it works is because it's not a new series. It is a franchise. And Jeff, you had said about how these series kind of just bombard the opening segments with all these different characters and scenarios, and it's that's the storytelling approach, which I'm not familiar with light novels, but I'll take your word for that. But with an adaptation of an existing series, with an adaptation that's part of a franchise like Index and Railgun, that works because you are directly catering even more so to those fans. It's not just here are a bunch of characters, learn them. It's here are the characters you already love. Can't you? I'm sure you can't wait to see what they're going to do next, or actually visually see, in terms of comic art, what they're doing next. So maybe
By the way,
franchise is the way to go rather than fresh new series.
Right. Well, I'm not completely sure if that is the normal light novel style. I'm not too familiar with them either. It just seems something more like what they would do there. Because, like, with a novel, any kind of novel, you actually can say, here's the setup, please check back in 30 chapters and we'll have the payoff. With a manga, you can't. With a manga and Shonen Jump, you can't really say, please check for the payoff in 30 chapters because we will definitely be running at that time.
Right. And actually, that guy might be correcting us here, or clarifying, I should say. We're not wrong, we just need further clarification. Saying, I think that may be specific to Ryogo, because Index didn't have that large of a cast in the beginning, nor Railgun. Ryogo really likes large casts of characters. I still think that my point stands, that it just kind of works to ease people into it, because there's more of a sense of anticipation there. It's already established in some capacity, but thank you for the clarification.
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel it kind of goes back to the point where it's already been written, as opposed to having to make up something new. And the fact that Index has already been written, it's kind of easier to adapt that, and it's been successful as an anime and as a manga in like both of its adaptations. So as opposed to Ryogo, who is having to create a new concept and then having to write it within the weekly Jump schedule. I mean, surely he probably has a lot of it already written out, but the fact that it's like not exactly written out as a novel already kind of puts like some kind of like the comparison is a little different, I would say, and it's obviously a much harder task to have to write something brand new as opposed to adapting something.
Right.
I mean, there are different challenges, of course, to each one, but I would imagine they're more likely to, I guess, screw up if your original idea isn't that great.
I was going to mention earlier, like, Ryogo does like really large casts of characters, but he usually does it in a very different way. Instead of all the characters knowing all of the other characters, they're kind of usually separated into groups where each group kind of has their characters that they're interconnected with, but then they do things separately and they have separate parts of the plot. And if you've seen Durarara or Baccano or read them, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It kind of jumps around to different storylines that all happen in the same universe and have a greater, like, bigger picture impact on the events transpiring. But they're all kind of you can localize them down to smaller groups of people and smaller circumstances. And I can't help but wonder why he didn't take that approach. I wonder if it would have been shut down by editors, like because that is certainly something we've never really seen in a shonen. It basically never gets explored, other than like a party of adventurers who might split up to each have their own fight. That's the closest we've ever really come.
Yeah. So I don't know. Does that reflect better or worse? He knows how to do it. He just didn't. It's still, at the end of the day, it's still kind of a mistake. But yeah. Yes, that guy. It also helps that that Raildex was smart and stayed away from Jump. Yeah, fair enough. I love Jump. Jump is by far my favorite of the three, but it is definitely also the hardest to get into of the three major shonen manga magazines. All right, I think that's enough. It's like nearly an hour. We've only talked about Stealth Symphony and related topics, basically. So let's I got a few like brief snippets, and then we can kind of pick like a longer topic, but it's kind of like a pseudo news segment. I wanted to point out, I don't know if everyone has seen this, but Kubo, obviously Kubo Taito, author of Bleach, has gotten an award, and I want to show that award for reaching, well, I mean, for his imminent reaching of 600 chapters, he has been given an actual trophy. And it is right here. This is the trophy. I have to keep talking so that you guys stay with me. Sorry, but this is the trophy that he has been given for reaching the milestone of 600 chapters, which again will be happening shortly. So,
I want that trophy.
I gotta be honest. I kind of expected for the trophy to be like a blank slate of like metal or something, like mounted with nothing on it.
My immediate first reaction to seeing that trophy, how long since that character's been in the manga?
I know, that's the thing. He's barely been around for ages. I don't know. I mean, mascot character, it kind of makes sense, I guess. But yeah. Oh well. So that's kind of funny. I scoured.
To be fair,
Yep.
He was actually in the manga recently. They kind of just dragged him along in the when Ichigo had to go get his sword fixed.
Yeah, I mean,
or something. He was there.
Okay.
If you want to
He
be
was
technical
there
with
a
this.
little bit.
His contract
You
to
heard
the
it.
end.
He participated
You
in
heard it
something.
here first. Danny claims that Kon had the biggest role out of any character recently in Bleach and deserved to be
Yeah,
on that trophy more than
He had,
Ichigo.
he had a role. Well, also considering that an Ichigo trophy doesn't look as good as a Cone trophy.
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't know. You could have like a Zanpakuto sticking out of the thing, like a sword in the stone kind of deal, something like that, at a little angle, something like, I don't know. There's anything they could have done. But it's cool. I mean, props to him. Actually, that's literally what that guy says. Props to him. It's a nice looking trophy. He's reaching 600 chapters. That's cool.
They should have had the trophy appear suddenly behind him.
There probably is fan art of that.
Wouldn't be surprised. There's fan out of everything. Yes, Samu, sorry. The delay, I'm sure. Hey, Kon returned for a while and confirmed he was the king of New York. All right, what else we got here? Couple pieces of news. I was looking through the Manga Helpers forums for anything at all to talk about because I was worried we wouldn't have much this week. Interesting note regarding Kenichi. For 7 weeks from Shonen Sunday issue 31 to 38, which is July 2nd through August 21st, Kenichi chapters will be longer, 22 to 25 pages. So, I mean, I don't think everyone here reads Kenichi, but I know Clint and I do, and it kind of makes some sense. It's pretty cool that these fights are going to have a little bit more breathing room.
Yeah, I'm definitely glad to hear that. I do feel like Kenichi has kind of been struggling for air. I think that's a great thing to give it because it just doesn't have enough room.
Yeah, it's really like these claustrophobic terms, like the metaphor that we're using here, that's completely appropriate because it's too much, isn't it? There's so much going on, and I kind of feel almost ashamed of myself because, like, mentally and rationally, I know I should really care about what's going on. It's a huge conflict. It's massive, the biggest one the series has ever seen. I like all of the characters. I like all of the fights, the motivation, and all that stuff. But because it's all happening at literally the same time, I find myself not quite as interested as I feel I should. So I feel like I'm almost being a bad fan.
Yeah, I get the exact same feeling as that. For me, one of the reasons for that, I'm guessing, is I find it hard to believe that anything real of like extreme personal importance for any character could really come of this. When if it did, it would probably just get immediately drowned out by what everyone else is doing. Like I could imagine like someone getting really really badly injured, but then the story has to immediately focus on something else, so it loses impact that way.
Yeah. It is too bad. I mean, again, it's far from bad. I am enjoying it in general. It's just I feel that I could enjoy it a lot more if I mean, the one character recently who's gotten more than a token page or two is Nijima. Sorry, not really my cup of tea. What else we got here?
Is there anyone who actually likes Nijima?
There are people who love Nijima. We we know that. I can confirm firsthand there are people who love Nijima.
Uh,
Yeah, I think the less said about that, the better. Anyway, a little bit of magazine news, Weekly Shonen Magazine, that is. Koji Seo, Hiroyuki, Miki Yoshikawa, and Hikaru Katsuki will publish a one-shot, Magazine Heroines on the Beach. So this is a crossover between Fuka, Aho Girl, which is not being scanned, so I wouldn't expect anyone to know that one, Yamada, and Baby Steps. They're going to have like a big crossover, probably just a bunch of fan service. But
Dead or Alive beach volleyball.
It's just going to be a giant magazine of beach chapters. Or are they all going to be in the same universe? That would be even funnier.
someone was
But
actually
they all kind of
bringing-
take place in the real world anyways, so.
Yeah, really. Someone was bringing up that they hope that it's actually going to be a proper crossover because the alternative is one of those cases. Do you remember? Was it One Piece and Toriko where they actually worked together? No. Okay, I'm mixing up things here. I remember what I'm talking about. There was like there was a special event where the Gintama author and the Sket Dance author were like making fun of a big crossover event that had happened. So
Yeah,
each
the Toriko and One
wrote-
Piece one.
Yeah, so each of them wrote each other's chapter, basically. I mean, they used the other characters. So, like, Shinohara Kenta was using the Gintama characters, and Hideaki Sorachi was writing the Sket Dance characters, and it was quite good. So, I mean, that was funny because of the authors involved, but I kind of would like this to just be an actual, like, little mini fun crossover. If you're doing, like, a promotional one-time thing, do it right. Don't just have it be, oh, this guy's drawing that other girl. That's not too special. Okay, we don't get Aho Girl, but that guy says, I've read Aho Girl before. I could literally feel my brain cells dying. So, okay then. Guess it's a good thing we don't get that one.
It's a comedy series about it's in the title, Aho Girl. It's about a stupid girl.
Yeah.
It's from the author of Assistant and Mangaka-san, which is an anime currently ongoing. Has its share of really dumb jokes, but that's its appeal, I suppose.
Samu offers up a talking point. Yeah, okay, this one's cool. We can at least briefly touch on this. When do you predict Bleach and Naruto will end? Which first, and how much longer do you see them lasting? So we've kind of touched on this, but I don't think we ever did officially give like predictions, like ballpark numbers for each. So there's like a follow-up to this. But let's put the predictions actually out there so that in like a year's time or whatever I can dig this back up and ridicule most of us. So point by point here, when do you think they will end?
I think Bleach will probably end before Naruto just because it's a little more clear how like desperately Kishimoto's clinging on to just the barest of threads. So
I have exactly the opposite opinion. I think Naruto will end well before Bleach.
Because
Interesting.
for all we know, Bleach could do the exact same thing, whatever Naruto is doing, and it hasn't
People
actually reached
said-
that point yet.
Kubo has said this is the final arc, but that is all he has said. He has not said that this arc will end in any commensurate amount of time.
How long ago did he say that?
He said that last. He said like 2 years ago. 2 years ago.
Well,
It was. It was
exactly.
after. It was. I think it was like 2 years ago. Quite literally going to be 2 years ago soon because I recall he went on like a month-long break during August or September, and he came back like around early October or late September, and that's when it was announced. I mean, I think it's kind of weird because like the fact that Kubo went out and stated that it was going to be the final arc, like it tells me that he is certain of himself of how he's going to end this. But Naruto, it feels like he's writing this week to week, and if it was gonna like, why they wouldn't really like mention that it was gonna be the last arc? Presumably because he doesn't even know himself. Considering that we just recently got another, bad guy flip. It's like it's just border. No, it's gone past the point of lunacy now, and it could very well keep going if they decide to make Sasuke the bad guy and then just pull some other nonsense at the end of it, because it very well could, because this recent chapter, it turns out like that like the final boss was Aizen and planned everything from the beginning, and like it's all just being done in a way that doesn't give me much confidence that I could take Kishimoto's word if he said that he was going to end it soon, because he clearly he probably doesn't know himself, and Kubo at the very least seems organized enough to say that it is going to be the final arc, and he wants people to pay attention to it because he knows he's going to end it, and it looks like it's reaching sort of that point. I mean, I wouldn't say it's the final battle in Bleach right now, but it's I would say we're in the second, in like the latter half of whatever this final arc is going to be, even if it is another year or so. So yeah, to answer the question, I think Bleach is going to end before Naruto.
All right, I gotta point out two things here real quick. One, it was last year, not 2 years ago, Danny. I have the spreadsheet open. The whole month hiatus was like 6 weeks, including the double issue in the middle of the year. For that would be Golden Week, I think. August. August is Golden Week, right? Not Obon.
It's Obon actually, I think.
Is it? You're muted, John.
Do that all the time. No, Golden Week is in the spring.
Golden Week is spring. Okay, so the Obon Festival then. All right, so yeah, issues 35 through 40 of last year. So that was like last summer entering fall. Is when I think there was kind of an announcement a little bit beforehand, but the actual like splashy spread, the 2-page spread saying this is the final arc was last year.
Okay.
I forget my other point, and it was actually really important and topical.
Naruto's really bad. Was that it?
Naruto is so bad. Oh my god. Oh wow.
I think you just like curling over in defeat really says most.
I do remember what it was, and that was the influencing factor here is that Bleach may not get to write its own ending as well as he might have hoped. And this is another like sub point that Simon talks about. But Bleach's table of contents ranking, I know they're going to give him the pass of, look, you've done so much for Jump, you've been here for so long, you can write it for the most part however you want. But it's not going to be as unlimited of a pass as someone that's doing well, because Bleach has not been doing too great. But anyway, yes. We'll get to more of your questions, Samu, but let's just take a moment. Holy hell, Naruto was terrible this week.
Yeah, it was real bad.
If you would have asked me who is the worst possible character to make the final boss, I may have been able to tell you Zetsu. Zetsu is the very last enemy you should make the final boss.
Yeah.
I would have said Hinata, but I see your point.
No, it's not. You say that.
Hinata would have been a good final boss, actually.
You say that jokingly, and I know why you say it. However, any good character, like on the side of good, good versus evil, so any protagonist character would have at least had the element going for them of betrayal. I've been tricking you all along. It still would, obviously, Hinata being the final boss is ridiculous. It would have been stupid. But at least it would have had the concept of, aha, I've been fooling you all these years.
There would have been some semblance of emotional content.
Zetsu, by definition, is not a character. The entire point of Zetsu all this time was just to not be there, and now it's the final boss.
It's a device. Yeah.
We got to the end of Ninja Turtles, and Shredder was usurped by the Foot, who is now our final boss.
Not all of them, just one.
Just one random guy.
The gopher, the guy who went to get coffee every morning.
It's not even that.
It
It's like the
sounds to me
tech
like what Inuyasha kind of ended up doing, except
Oh,
with no foreshadowing.
But the last boss was still Naraku, wasn't it?
It wasn't the last boss. I only read about this, but wasn't the last boss of Inuyasha the jewel itself?
Yeah, it was actually the jewel. But I mean, that was kind of just like on a thematic level, because I mean, Naraku, they still had to kill Naraku to get to the whole jewel thing. But I mean, it was like we still got the payoff kind of in a way. If you know just wanted to see Naraku die, so that was still there. It didn't really like the jewel didn't really supplant Naraku. It was just an afterthought, I guess.
I think we can all agree that Inuyasha was executed better than Naruto.
Yeah,
The-
at this point, yeah.
The final boss of Inuyasha was not Naraku or the jewel. It was my willingness to live. It was my patience. It was my soul.
that is your final. That is the final boss of your own your taste.
Actually, I really hate to do this, but could someone please explain to me what Zetsu actually is? Because I remember reading about the Naruto villains a while back, and I just remember Zetsu being described as the guy who ate the bodies of the dead people they killed so they couldn't be found or something. And then I read about Black Zetsu clones, and I don't know what those are either.
You kind of just yeah.
Sort of, yeah. Let me make this really easy. You know a Venus flytrap, right? Like the plant that eats flies? Okay.
Right.
Shoot yourself in the face. That's a lot more interesting.
You essentially hit the nail on the head. He was originally designed to recover the body of ninja who carry secrets to the village with them. He was like genetically engineered, I suppose, for that purpose. Except we find out this chapter that he's some kind of ancient grand baby of the evil mistress of the world.
Well, it's more like so. It's like it's all done to like absorb things and then become Kaguya again. But at its at the core, it's still just Zetsu that was just created as a as insurance to revive these people. So it is still asinine in the way that it's explained and the way that it's being executed right now. This is just a lump of clay that's being made in the image of all these things that it just absorbed.
I mean, yeah, he wasn't even a character. He was like a device to be used by other people who had plans.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, yeah, it's like the jewel being the final boss. Like, huh?
Or like the jewel being the literal final boss, like spreading legs and punching people.
Yeah, that would have been that wouldn't. That's what makes this happening in Naruto even like surmountably worse than in Inuyasha. Because I mean, in Inuyasha, it was just made to like as a to drive like this whole the thematic point home about Kagome and her trust for Inuyasha and things like that. But there's really no meaning behind this particular thing. It's just another enemy for them to fight. It's like it's
so Kaguya can absorb Zetsu and then go true form.
Yeah, let's see that.
For like the fourth time.
You know what this is? I'm going to deliberately invoke Godwin's law here because it is this stupid. This is any given horrifying dictator of world history. So let's say Hitler because that's convenient and everyone knows him. This is Hitler getting up on the podium and delivering one of his horrible, hateful speeches and riling up his followers and off to do these just absolutely gruesome, grotesque, deplorable, despicable things. And then he leaves and you find out that that's just some random guy and the evil thing was the podium.
It's a cool podium.
I just like it's been so bad now and for so long. And it's just every time Naruto surprises me by being bad, I'm just in shock. Like, how did it do this? My expectations were already were already as low as they could possibly go, and somehow it surprised me by being bad. And I think the main problem with like what's going on right now in the plot is that we were at that point like a while back where we couldn't imagine Madara losing, and then we found out that like two ancient gods were inside of Naruto and Sasuke, and we're like, okay, so this is the ass pull that it took for Madara to lose. Well, now we're at that point again. Like, how does Kaguya / Black Zetsu lose? It doesn't look possible right now. So what is going to have to happen this time?
I want it to keep getting worse, honestly. At this point, I want it to keep going down. I want Sasuke to absorb Kaguya and become the final boss.
No,
Actually make Hinata the final boss. Actually do it.
No, it's the moon. The moon's the final boss.
oh my God,
What's going to happen?
Let's fight
Chicago-
this.
Oh.
The
This is-
moon is going to absorb. Yeah, it'll be great.
I think Sasuke's going to be a bit too busy absorbing Naruto to absorb Kaguya, unfortunately.
I was going to say, if the series doesn't end in a Sasuke Naruto kiss, I'm just, I'm not sold.
Yeah.
Not going to buy the tankobons.
Samu would like to interject. I love how it is so easy for all of you to talk shit about Naruto like this. Kishimoto does make it easy, though. Yeah, he does.
Yeah. I don't even know who Kaguya is, and this is easy.
I have to say that a little behind-the-scenes peek here. One of the things that I keep telling the guys is I want this show not to be like Beamcast, like the proper podcast where I have researched questions and I sit here and I actually ask, and there's a call and response, and I say something, you say something in return, very formal, analytical, which is great for that kind of show. And with this show, I'm like, no, guys, please loosen up. Let's just talk. Like, all of us are equal. Let's just talk this over. And it always feels a little bit stagnant to begin with, except when we talk about Naruto, and everyone's like, no, I have to say this thing about how bad Naruto is. Get out of the way.
we are united in our hatred.
Naruto's pretty bad, yeah.
Oh, man.
So you're right. Naruto should never change. Otherwise, we'll never have these moments.
That's true. Like, what are we gonna pile on after Naruto and Bleach end?
Yeah, I'm sure by that point Fairy Tail will have taken up the sword.
Oh,
No, that's. I guess the reason we're able to be so passionate about Naruto is because we actually at some point probably liked it. I don't think we could say that we could say that about Fairy Tail, because Fairy Tail doesn't become a passionate hatred for it. It's just indifference.
the difference between Naruto and Fairy Tail, and the reason why we'll still cover Naruto, but we never talk about Fairy Tail, barring like, oh, it's been like 6 months since we talked about Fairy Tail. Let's throw those fans a bone. The difference is with Naruto, there's promise, and it goes hand in hand with what you just said, Danny, about we used to like it, but it's even more than just that. Like, even now, even at its absolute worst, we see in Naruto the possibility for Kishimoto to turn it around, or at least salvage it, at least make it like decent. Okay, here's how he could fix, the ending or these characters or this fight. He could still make something out of this because the pieces are there. It's just he falls flat on execution. With Mashima and Fairy Tail, there's nothing. There's absolutely nothing to work with. There is not a fragment, a figment, a tiny piece of anything remotely salvageable in that heaping pile of trash. Fairy Tail is just doomed, period.
That's something interesting I want to bring up, though, because I've occasionally talked about Fairy Tail with people, and something they say a lot is that they hear the series goes downhill at some point. And I never know what to say to that, because, like, I will admit, I shouldn't admit this, but when I was first reading Fairy Tail, I think there was a period where I was interested in it. I'm not sure why that is. I think it's just because I never read Brave Master and thus didn't know what to expect. But I wasn't sure when that stopped. I think there was just a point where I did stop caring. I'm just not sure why or why other people haven't. I find it hard to get the mentality of some of the other more of the anime fans than I guess.
Can't
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead, Danny.
I do also notice that these series are gonna have their fans. The despite how badly we ridicule the series themselves. And Naruto still has their diehards. Fairy Tail is a strange one because I guess from the beginning, you can say it is a passable series, but it doesn't have the, or at least for me, it doesn't have like it doesn't reach even remotely the heights that Naruto did, yeah, in its earlier days. But Fairy Tail kind of stays average, and then as a result of it repeating itself, it kind of just becomes bad. So like if you were to if you were reading it from the beginning, then I would imagine you could probably see this a lot clearer. If you're kind of just starting it, brand new and stuff, it kind of just seems it's fresh to you. So I guess you don't really hate it as much as we do, I guess.
I think I don't want to make generalizations about Fairy Tail fans because, as always, with absolutely any series, if you like it, that's perfectly cool. I don't lose respect for you. There's no hard feelings between anyone there. You like what you like. Your opinion is different. That's completely cool. So there's no issue there. So I'm not going to say, well, Fairy Tail fans, they like it because they're dumb. Nothing like that whatsoever. I have noticed fairly often it happens, and this may just be coincidence, so that this is not a judgment, but it so happens that Fairy Tail fans have simply read less, and for Fairy Tail, which is a formulaic at best and plagiarist at worst series, if these fans have not come across these formulas, cliches, tropes, etc. elsewhere yet, if this is the first they're seeing it, then that's a really easy way for them to like it, because there's nothing wrong with the formula, it's the application of the formula. So that is a quite major reason why. There are others who like Fairy Tail and they like a lot of other things and they just love everything. They just want to read more and more and more, and they're not terribly critical about anything. Again, totally cool. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. And there are some other people that it's an issue of culture. And I have mentioned this, but I will repeat it here. I think the big Fairy Tail versus One Piece debate, which isn't a debate if we're really honest here, but let's pretend that it's a debate here. The difference is one of cultural aesthetic. It's one of what you, as part of your culture, are attuned to enjoying. And Fairy Tail does better, or at least as well, but usually has done better than One Piece in the West, here in America, for example. Whereas in Japan, no contest, hands down, One Piece dominant, not even close. It's a joke. It's a walkover. And the difference is you look at the Japanese, like a cross section of every single demographic, and it'll be like there routinely these polls will come out where it's men of 4 different age group demographics, 15 to 22 and 23 to 30, all the different age groups that would be reading, the main age groups, and then similarly for women. And One Piece is at or near the top of almost every single one of them because, and this is my opinion, my interpretation, so feel free to disagree, the Japanese the Japanese audience of manga seems to be a little bit less concerned with self-image. They're more just interested in the story itself. Americans, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, this is just an honest assessment, seem a little bit more interested in what's cool, what's a little bit more self-aware, what's more intense, what's more upfront in your face. Fairy Tail does give you more of that. Now, I happen to think that's that's when you get kind of into the territory, and I'm going to wrap up the entirety of discussion here. This goes back to what we were talking about with if, as you had said, John, when you use darker tones, when you use more serious tones, you can't at the same time be irreverent about it. That's what's cool here. In America, it's kind of, that's the norm. Someone else, I forget who it was, and I apologize, said that that's kind of becoming the norm for when a series is desperate, is to kind of, well, it's not working. Throw in angst, throw in darkness, throw in, taking yourself too seriously. That's what we in America love. I mean, I don't personally, but the vast majority of the audience that I'm aware of loves that kind of stuff. So it's simply a question of different tastes between different demographics and different audiences. And again, there's no judgment to be made there. I prefer One Piece, obviously. I think that it does every single story element, character, theme, everything across the board light years better. But if you like Fairy Tail, that's cool. Soapbox over. We do need to wrap up. John needs to go, and we're kind of going little bit long, but I do want to give everyone the chance to respond or to close the topic here on Fairy Tail, One Piece demographics and whatnot. So feel free, anything you want to say.
I will definitely agree with what you're saying about Fairy Tail. I think part of the reason I did enjoy it more when I started is because it was one of the first few manga I did read. Though still after I finished One Piece, so I'm not sure how that. Well, it was. I think it was time. It was just One Piece, Fairy Tail, and Negima in terms of mainstream shonen. So I guess it was just over time I forgot why it was I enjoyed it. And just became a lot more indifferent.
That's cool. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. If Fairy Tail's one of your first series, nothing wrong with that at all. What else you guys got? Anything else?
No, not really. I mean, it's kind of you kind of hit the nail on the head right there. So it's not really much else I can say.
Okay.
Just glad that One Piece is back. That means it's.
Oh my god. So happy.
For now.
Yeah. I mean, good that he's back. Happy to hear that. Well, haven't heard definitively, but I assume the whole tonsillitis thing hasn't hit any kind of complication because he wouldn't be back. So, good. Happy for him. Happy for his health. Happy to have One Piece back. Yeah, same thing as John said. It's not a week without One Piece. One Piece is the ever present. It's always there and always should be there. So, all right, yeah. So not just on this topic, but is there anything else on any topic? What you guys have been reading? Anything under the sun before we wrap up that you guys want to touch on before we go?
No. All I had to say was Read or Die, and I mentioned that already. I am about to start King of Thorn, but haven't actually read it yet.
Cool. Report back. Let us know.
All right.
Yeah, all right, sorry. Let's actually do that because I did kind of promise that, and then we got sidetracked. Very quickly here, exact predictions of the ending times of Naruto and Bleach. I'll ballpark. Let's say Bleach ends this November and Naruto ends next June. There, shot in the dark.
All right. I'll be a little more vague. Naruto ends 1 year from today. Bleach ends 2 years from today.
I'm gonna say Naruto December, Bleach March.
I'm gonna say by the time we talk about Bleach ending, Naruto's still gonna be running.
Oh, come on. Come on. Give us a prediction so we can make fun of you later.
All right. Let's see. Bleach is gonna end next year, August. Naruto is gonna keep going. I don't know when it's gonna end.
So, irrelevant to the conversation, then it's going to go long enough that it's not really a talking point.
Yeah.
Okay.
I could see Bleach ending, maybe around Christmas time, right at the end of the year. I can see Naruto going possibly even to March or April. I would say April.
Okay. Someone write that down because I didn't. I'll just make a note that this is the show where we did this, and then when one of them ends, we can come back and check. But I have no idea what anyone just said, including myself. So
we'll have to figure out a prize.
Yeah.
And I said 1 year from today, so today is June 20th, just to make sure. So it's not too confusing.
If you're
the prize will be when Naruto ends. We all win. Yay!
Oh my!
Sorry.
All right.
Sorry.
Well, this certainly livened up a lot. So yeah, let's head out of here. Thanks everyone very much for being here. It's a pleasure as always to talk to you, and we'll do it again next week.
Oh, sounds good.
Take it easy, fellas.
What's up?
I said take it easy.
Okay. And as always, thank you very much to the people who are tweeting in, Samu and that guy. Really appreciate it. You guys get conversation flowing, so thank you very much. Thank you to any subsequent VOD viewers on YouTube. Do pass the word around that we do this, and we'll be back next Friday, same time. So thanks very much. Take it easy. Later.
See ya.
Bye.